What's up, everybody, and welcome to the Apartment 113 podcast, where we talk with cool folks in the cannabis and psychedelics industry to learn about their projects and celebrate their successes. My name is Rob Sanchez, and this is episode 33. We're joined today by Josh Kerbel, the CTO of Frshminds. Frshminds is a beginner-friendly service to find private psychedelic retreats. From Psilocybin on the beach to Ayahuasca in the jungle, you can find the style of healing you need across the globe, with participating destinations like Spain, Jamaica, Mexico, Ecuador, and Brazil. Josh and the team are building a one-stop shop with educational resources to help you prepare for all kinds of journeys. Find out more at frshminds.com. That's F-R-S-H Minds, M-I-N-D-S.com. And enjoy the show. Josh, welcome to the show, man.
Thanks, Rob. How you been?
Hey, hanging in there. Been working away here since Benzinga. I think it's wild how fast the summer's actually gone.
Yes.
Man, I'm excited to talk with you here and dig into Frshminds a little bit and kind of learn about what you guys have been up to since we met down there in Florida.
Yeah. Cool. I'll let you know on our journey. We've been around the block, so to speak.
So to begin, I guess a little bit for our listeners, would you mind giving us kind of an introduction of what Frshminds offers?
Sure. So Frshminds is a resource for psychedelic retreats. So it's not like booking a regular trip. You want to go to Mexico, Jamaica, Europe. You just pick a hotel, pick a destination. There's a whole educational process associated with psychedelic retreats. You got to learn about the substances, the different philosophies, the different traditions. So what we've tried to do is build something out for the novice user, someone who knows nothing about psychedelic retreats, teach them the basics, teach them how to make an educated decision. And then we've stratified the site in terms of different price points, different substances, and we're trying to make the process as idiot-proof as possible. No thinking involved.
Yeah, man, I think the site is looking comprehensive. It's pretty sweet. Basically being able to start by selecting either a location or a destination, a duration, price range, to even to the trip types, and being able to combine those filters and kind of find something right for you.
Yeah.
Paired with some education that's always needed with psychedelia. You don't want someone to kind of embark on that unaware.
It's and there's one of the challenges with rolling out education is figuring out what is worthwhile to tell people. There is a lot of misleading information, probably the best way to put it. So we try and stick to more the science side of things, and we're starting to expand it in different topics. We're looking to expand into a bit of sexuality and psychedelics, and we're expanding into the philosophical end of things, but we are really trying to keep it as evidence-based as possible.
Right. I think that's the vibe that the psychedelic industry is rolling out in general, right? It's really focusing on that evidence-based and that medicinal approach, finding the therapeutic benefits and the obviously spiritual benefits along with that are indisputable, but not the selling points, I think, on a lot of the industry at this point.
Yeah, let's just say, we've met a lot of people, and there's, a range of personalities in the industry. Any new industry, you're going to attract a certain archetype of person. And let's put it like, we know that there's probably 300 to 500 of these retreats, and there's the high-end professional operators. And then there's, the ones who are, just starting out and, hopefully they make it and they provide a decent service. But like I said, there's a range of budget opportunities for everyone to.
It's approachable. If you're willing to adventure a little bit or take a chance, huh?
Adventure. It's a good way to put it.
So if we zoom out a little bit, man, how about your story and how you ended up with Frshminds?
All right. Yes. So myself and my associate, John, who's the CEO of the company, we met in Cannabis. We're at a company by the name of Lift & Co. in Canada. And we built out, it was actually a cannabis product marketplace was an educational site, and we ran it in conjunction with some consumer-orientated shows. Anyone who's been in cannabis, especially in Canada, will know of the Lift shows. They're still running.
Yes, I've been wanting to attend one here for a while.
Yeah, they've actually expanded to San Francisco, I think, this year. So
nice.
Lift itself met its demise during COVID. And then not too long after that, John and I started pushing this idea forward. We actually weren't sure where this was going to go, mainly because, psychedelics, I mean, they're still not even like legal in North America. It's all very gray. So originally we started out, we're just going to talk about psychedelic products. And we had mushroom listings, product listings. We're actually in the process of like taking those down. We didn't sell any mushrooms, just to be clear.
I see.
I just want to be very clear. We did not
just actually
sell
listing different
any
types.
Drugs. Full disclaimer. But in Toronto, it's gray. But up here, we have 4 or 5 mushroom dispensaries. There's probably 80 to 90 dispensaries online. You've got Oregon going legal, but we weren't sure how's this going to play out. And then, we've been taking a look, and there's all these retreats. They've been, popping up in legal, semi-legal jurisdictions, whether it's Peru, Costa Rica, Mexico. They're all over the world. And they're starting in Oregon as well. Oregon is building out a more structured process, and I'm sure it's going to be bumpy, like everything else.
Yes, as soon as you add structure, you get...
Right, attempt to add some legislation. Else. But, I appreciate them for being first. So we saw there's a huge fragmented opportunity. The market didn't know where it was going, but for us personally, it meant taking a lot of risks, and there's still a lot of risks. We still don't know how this is going to play out. What I do know is that there's a huge fragmented landscape, and these retreats are busy. The well-run ones are insanely busy, and they are booked, and they are not cheap, right? So what we think is there's a huge infrastructure that needs to be built for the industry. So that's really what we're looking to get a toehold on, and where Frshminds evolves to from there. I'm not going to predict the future. Ideally, we'd like to be a core central part of it, but we don't know how that's going to play out. We just want to be in the game.
Definitely, yeah. And I think that's, as far as just wanting to be in the game, I think the effort that Frshminds has put out already and kind of the feature set that you have on the site is definitely rich. Coming into Psychedelia with a little bit of background in the underground scene, it's very comfortable to just navigate through and see okay, there's some things I can read about here already, or maybe which countries are close by, or what kind of trip types do you have. Right. But I can also see the the approachability for an amateur.
Yeah,
and for someone really, brand new.
Yeah, so that's really the goal, because again, there's no one who's really an expert in this.
Right. There's, so I guess, just someone who's never done it before versus someone who's got a little notch on the belt.
Right. I'm speaking as a 50-year-old man, and at this point in my life, I get text messages inbounds from contacts asking me about this stuff. So it's starting the awareness, but it is still so early. Right.
Yeah, definitely.
You just look at cannabis. So I was in cannabis from about 2017, got out of it 2020, the arc of cannabis in Canada, it's been challenging, right?
Right. And I was there in the peak for a little while, implementing software for folks like Afria and some, mega grow houses.
Right. So what did I do? I mean, I'm not a stock speculator type, but I think I may have bought a range, a very small amount of, Canadian LPs at basically their highest point, thinking, how bad can this get? Right.
Only to see, huh?
Right. And it's, the market is tanked. And again, this is only 5 years, right?
Right.
This is 2017, 2022, 2018, it got legalized in Canada. We're talking 5 years. In the US, it's not even federally legal. There are still some states that don't even have legal marijuana. So in psychedelics, oh my God, this is
shout out to Kansas.
It's so painfully early. That this, you can look at the past, you look at other products. I mean, cannabis, 10% of Canadians were smoking daily before it was legalized. Probably similar in the States. So that there's a pent up demand for this stuff. You just don't know how long it's going to take. You're starting to see the decrim movements in the States, but there's still a lot of misconceptions about what decriminalization is, right? But you're starting to see it.
Yes. Yeah. And that's going to take a long time for that stigma to kind of
Oh my
wear
God.
away a little bit, as it's been ingrained pretty hard
Oh yeah.
into society, and I mean, into very different, even different, niches of society.
Oh yeah.
It's kind of there, but to find oasis in psychedelics, or to find therapy or healing, is kind of the like the central like point of all of this, right? To
Right.
find that healing, and that's kind of the one of the driving factors, I think, that's keeping these retreats so busy. Even
Oh
though it's so
yeah.
new and there's not a lot of knowledge about it, it's just that once someone does kind of unlock that next step,
Right.
or that get to that next plateau of just like realizing themselves, they're not shy about sharing that, right? About trying to encourage others to do the same. I think there's a kind of word of mouth and kind of community network stemming out of the whole thing.
So I think there's kind of like two types of people who end up at these retreats. There's those who are trying to solve, I don't want to say a real problem because that's not real, but they've been diagnosed with something. They've got
Yeah.
depression, anxiety, and they want to manage it like that. But then you've got the other half, like, I don't want to like call them the midlife crisis types, but they've kind of hit a plateau in their life, and they're like, what's next? What am I going
Just
to
need
do
to kind of
next?
clear the table a little bit, huh?
Yeah, like I know, like, I remember who was it? Like my father, he hit like 40 and he became like a natural health food fanatic. People pick up all sorts. So I think that with the good chunk of people, they're like, well, I've got a roof over my head, I've got a reasonably stable family structure, I've got some income, I'm just bored, right? Like, what else can I? And so this, I think, is like, something else that people will dabble in. And they'll go and they'll enjoy it. I find, without being too incriminating, I see the utility of it, even on a mental, like, I'm not gonna say mental wellness, but just like taking an alternative perspective.
Yeah, kind of on the worldview or on the outlook.
Yeah, just like even problem solving, whether it's like professional, interpersonal, just lets you like think a little bit differently. And some people get that, some people don't. Do I
That's a
think,
good way to put it, though.
yeah, yeah, like there are some people who like make it sound like this is going to change your life. I would never promise that stuff to anybody. Right?
Right, and I definitely agree with that
Yeah.
angle. Right, it's not as magical as it may seem in the cartoons or
Yeah,
in a
it's not a
movie or anything.
panacea. It's
Yes,
like,
and you may have those moments of
right,
being at the panacea, but the whole experience is definitely has its ups and its downs, and
100%.
its
And like,
tunnels and bridges. It's a whole thing, right?
right. And like the same thing, like, any change has to come from within. So whether you use something like psychedelics or whether you do it on your own, I've had my ups and downs in life. And, at a certain point, I'm not going to say hit rock bottom because I clearly didn't hit rock bottom, right? But like, you have to reevaluate yourself. Some people do it without drugs, some people do it with drugs. And I think that's more what it's about than the actual substance itself. It's more of a tool than anything else. But if you're
You can
not
kind of
willing,
unlock that potential, or
yeah,
it'd be like a
just
little bit of a cheat code almost for some,
yeah,
if they're facing a blocker, or
yeah,
something that's maybe unapproachable
right.
when sober.
So like, there's also more of like, how much are you willing to look at yourself and understand like what your
Yes.
proclivities are, bad habits,
Oh man, yeah.
and
And
when you
I
get,
had some bad times with a notebook and a pen,
yeah,
where I should have been writing alone. Looking a little,
right,
maybe a little too closely on some trips at times. So it's
right.
definitely something to ponder too.
Right. And if you're not willing to like look at your own behavior and understand how it affects those around you, regardless of whether, what's the saying, it may not be your fault, but it's your responsibility. So lots of us get burdened with things. It's not your fault, but you hit a certain age and you realize you've picked up some bad routines, right? So,
Yes.
and I think that's often what people are trying to like deal with. You know, they're not depressed necessarily. They haven't been formally diagnosed. It's just like,
Right.
you know, the rules that got you there aren't going to be the rules that get you out of there, so to speak. So
It can
it's
be
like you're
kind of that
banging your
leg
head
up.
against the wall. Let's try something different. And I think
Yeah.
that's what
Yeah.
the retreats do for people.
That's a really good way to put it. No, I think that, yeah, expecting that kind of earth shattering, realization
Right.
or moment is too much. And actually, just shifting the perspective, almost like a lazy Susan or like a
Yeah.
rotating shelf, right? It's just turning that object a little bit. And, with that kind of perspective shift or that kind of moments of thinking, you can definitely find your way through some problems
Right.
on that side.
And it's even like when you take back, listen, we all get criticism from significant people in our lives. And most of the time, we kind of blow it off, right? But like, my experience with these substances, maybe what everyone's telling you is true. And it kind of like lets you think about that. And it's actually quite painful. I'm not going to lie. But,
Yeah,
called
I think,
growth, right?
yeah, I think
I
that's a
think it's
good,
called growing
exactly. It's not always,
or sadism, one or the other.
yeah, there's an element of that. If you keep looking into the abyss,
Right.
it's looking back at you, or it's waiting for you to get closer. And that,
What did I hear? Someone once described depression to me as seeing the world for what it is. You're not delusional enough. Right? So like you don't want to be. Everyone needs a bit of a rose-colored glasses.
yeah,
And I think sometimes like psychedelics might be they
just add
take
that
those
rose
glasses
color
off.
back.
What was
Yeah.
that?
They just add that rose tint back
Yeah.
that you may have kind of smudged off with
Well,
life and
afterwards, but
experiences.
before it's when you're like staring at yourself and you're thinking like, "Oh my God, I've done that," or it's like it. In some ways, it removes that veneer, and you're kind
Interesting.
of like, you're staring right into like, "Oh, now I get it." I get
Right.
it why my children don't talk to me, my family hates me, my business partners left. Like you're like, "Oh, I got to fix that."
Yeah, and that's as trivial as that may sound, to say that, actually coming to that realization
Right.
about something in your own life is easier said than done, right?
Oh
Especially
yeah.
for deep rooted things or habitual
Right.
processes.
Like the ability to like, I think ideally psychedelics, if used properly, they kind of let you own your shit, which is really important.
Kind of an ultimate or like
Yeah.
an extreme responsibility.
Right. And not
And
like say as a cop out. Some people, they use it as a cop out. So I wouldn't never say that, but just like acknowledge that I've made mistakes, I've got shortcomings, and I need to apologize to people for that. And I think psychedelics, ideally, if used properly, enable that. Right.
yeah, yeah. And how do you see the retreat kind of industry and infrastructure being the ideal way to administer that experience?
I mean,
Or like right now, it's the only way, obviously.
right.
But looking towards the future,
It's
what would you think right now, or kind of where are you leaning
yeah,
towards
it's a bit
in
of a
that
wild
space?
west right now. There's the good, the bad, the ugly. Um, ideally, you want to speak to someone who's been to the retreat that you're going to. You can read online reviews, and we're not quite there where we have them, but online reviews you don't necessarily know where those come from. But if you can like speak with people,
There's
and
a different
find out
connection there to hear their story.
these things are so like it's all over the place. Some of them are 5-star resorts. Some of them are shacks, right? Like some of them are like you're like, I
An
might not
ayahuasca in the
live.
jungle.
Yeah. And it depends like what you're looking for. Also, some people really want to tie into the whole traditional native spirituality. And other
Right, kind of,
people,
and the
they don't.
ritual aspect,
Yeah.
right?
The one thing that I say is, a lot of the retreats will talk about essentially healing's their product, right? And I'm not sure unless you're willing to actually examine that, but your own things, no one's just going to magically heal you. right?
You can't just sit in the room. You can't and drive to Mexico and come back.
Have some ayahuasca. You have to be an active participant. And the way I see it is a lot of it's no different than going to a psychiatrist or psychologist, in a major American or Canadian city.
Right. Are you just going to nod the whole time through, or are you going to dig in?
Right. They don't know you. They can be very empathetic and very understanding, and that's wonderful. But they don't have your lived experience. Right.
Right. And in that regard, some of these retreats are kind of like that, like guided cognitive behavioral therapy.
Right.
In some ways, there's some CBT there.
Yeah. But I think with any therapeutic modality, don't expect them to do all the work.
Yes. Yeah. I found with microdosing at least, and with psychedelics in general, like journaling and that kind of post work, it's definitely essential. A lot of the integration, as it's called in the industry now, I think it can be easy to overlook that part. Once you get back into your groove. But it's more about the changes and the things that you do those next few days than maybe the experience that happened overnight, right?
Right. It's do you change your behavior, right? And do you change your outlook? And unless you're if you're going to think that you're going to go to one of these things and come back a changed person without putting any effort in. And I'll say most of these retreats do offer follow-ups. And I think that's what it is. It's just basically, behavior modification. What does it take? 30 to 60 days?
Right. So they can come back and kind of get that reinforcement that they may need.
Right.
Yeah.
Just like forward motion. And I think that's what, in some ways, when you actually look at the way these things are structured, these substances become secondary. It's more, you could probably go there and have no substances, but just be if you are motivated to change something, but you just kind of need that little push. That might be, which is fine. That's a purpose in and of itself, and there's absolutely.
Or you just need to be kind of taken out of your normal environment, right? I kind of feel that way going on any kind of road trip or vacation. Right. If it's longer than 3 or 4 days, I kind of fall into this much more comfortable mind state. I can't
shower,
for lack of better words, right? Living the dream. But I think that my thoughts at that time are more innovative and kind of freer. I could feel that that stress is gone, maybe more willing to address some issue, actually being away from it all. And I think that there's some element of kind of Zen and meditation in Psychedelia and in the retreats as well. And I think the yogis would have folks try to attain that same level of questioning or that same kind of element of realization by sitting with their thoughts, right? And calmly trying to find that vibe. And that's way easier said than done, at least from my tries and experience trying to practice. Right.
I can sometimes be too far. I am extremely comfortable with the pleasure of my own company. Right? So I get a lot of people, that's just it. They are not comfortable being alone with their thoughts.
Yes. And,
that's
it's more
what often it is.
Yeah. And I, plenty of thoughts rolling around over here on my side. I think with meditation, it's more about trying to put those thoughts as passing clouds, right? And sit outside of them, which I think is sometimes what the psychedelics can help you do, is kind of be outside of that line of thought or look at things a little bit with that different vibe, right?
Yeah.
So have you tried any of these retreats yet?
So my partner John actually spent January? I think it was January. He spent 30 days in Mexico and Costa Rica. He visited about 30 or so retreats, so he's been on the ground. And we'll probably do another tour as well. Now, those tours, it doesn't, really lend itself well to having an experience because, when you're trying to hit 20 spots in 30 days, you're not really hanging out. You just want to see, hey, I'm Josh, John, show me around. And plus, a lot of these places are very private. in terms of, when people go there for a certain experience, they don't want randos just like roaming around. It's not like a resort experience.
Right. So
And I
so
think
there's it's
that's,
more transactional from that level of travel.
yeah. So I mean, I shouldn't say that. Some places are making it more resort like. If you look at like the higher end ones, like they're beautiful.
Right.
Um,
In their offerings.
right.
But still
They're
private though to know who pays or
right.
who attends.
Right. I mean, there's something about it for me personally. I think it should be a little more rustic. There's just something about it. And that,
Yeah.
again, that's my own thing. I'm, a 50-year-old man. I live like a university student, and I enjoy myself. But some people don't want that experience. So, like,
They want a little bit more amenities at the end of the day.
yeah, they want, they like central air conditioning, running water, maybe, I mean, but again,
Yes.
like some of these retreats, they're like, you can come here, like $500 for a week, and you're sleeping in a hut with five other people. There is no air conditioning, and you got 3 hours of electricity a day.
Wow. So you can really have that rustic, like
Oh yeah,
connecting with
it
nature
is
kind of
like a rain.
experience.
And this is just starting. I don't think people realize like we're in a bit of a bubble and we're like, oh, it's blowing up. Like I could talk to like 10
It's
people, 15 people on the
relative, huh?
street. Yeah, they'd be like, what? And then there's confusion. People are like, oh, I hear psilocybin's legal, or like LSD, I hear that's legal too. No, none of this stuff is like legal, at least, North America, Toronto, California. None of this stuff is legal. But people are learning. People are learning.
Right. And I wonder with the cannabis industry kind of paving the road for a new industry and kind of alternative modes of
It's
healing and therapy, if
so
there's lessons
there's
psychedelics can learn, or if it's better off kind of keeping separate from the cannabis space.
so my personal feeling, and it's contrary to almost everyone in this space, is I think at a certain point you'll be able to buy these products as a natural health product, right?
A CPG approach
Yeah, and I'm not
for
saying it's gonna be tomorrow
psilocybin,
for
right?
like mushrooms, and so if you want to take a step back, it's really weird. You know what which mushrooms are currently legal? The mushrooms that will kill you are fully legal, right? You can go to the forest, you can grow them at home, you can give them out, and some of those things will turn your livers to sawdust. But the psychedelic ones, which I mean, they are its own form of toxin, those things are technically illegal right now. But when
Right,
you take a step
contains.
back and you look at the drugstores, I mean, you can go get a bottle of Tylenol and do yourself in. So I think at a certain point, and this is maybe 10, 15 years, you'll be able to buy this stuff in a health food store. There'll be low
There's no
dose,
distinction at
right?
that point. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there's stuff in a health food store that could kill you right now. You take enough of it, you've got a
Right.
bad reaction.
Irresponsibly or long enough, or yeah, if your
Yeah.
biochemistry is unique enough to
Right.
be allergic or
Right.
something like that, right?
Yeah, who knows? I mean, like, listen, right now, the industry is like mushrooms are, they absorb everything from the soil. So when you're buying stuff, you have no clue what you're getting. You don't clue like what sort of soil, contaminated soil, heavy metals. Mushrooms suck all that stuff up. Half the time, you don't even know that you're getting sawdust, right?
It's
So
just getting
I,
everything from the cakes or from the medium, from
yeah,
anything
you
they're
have
growing in.
no clue. So at some point, we're going to come to our senses like we did cannabis. And I think you'll see this stuff at, buy like 50 pills in a health food store. Again, this is,
Manufacture it correctly
yeah,
with SOPs
yeah.
and thresholds and
I mean, again, this is, most people do not believe this. I'll be a bit
yeah,
of I'll be a contrarian on this. I have background in alternative healthcare. So like I've seen
I
this
see.
stuff before, and like I know that there's is it Irwin? There's one nutraceutical manufacturer that's already gotten into this. I know I always mess up the name. It's the flyargic mushroom, the Amanita muscarina,
Yes.
right? So
Yeah.
that, I don't know if you've had any experience with that. That's last I looked, was fully legal in the United States. I
It
think
is. I know some folks doing basically like mail order
right.
businesses.
And, it's hallucinogenic, and I think it gets through a crack, but it has to be prepared properly. If it is not prepared properly, like, supposedly can, like, do serious bodily harm. And I'm not.
And those kinds of things are why I think I'm more for that vision that you laid out, right?
Right.
I know that we're
Regulated.
starting very pharmaceutical based and very healing, to go to these retreats and
Right.
separate yourself from society to experience these things. But being able to just go to the Walgreens down the street
And again,
and
that's like
grab like a
15 years
chocolate
out. I'm
bar.
not.
Yeah,
People be like,
no, I
oh,
could.
you said this. I'm like, yeah, in like 15 years, I think you
Right,
might see it.
definitely further out, right? It takes time for those kinds of changes to happen throughout society, or for any stigma to move, like we've seen with cannabis. It just
Cannabis
takes a long
taken
time.
cannabis. I mean, if you go back and want to say when medical cannabis was legalized in California, was it 96,
It was
99?
it was longer back than it seems. They were
Yeah,
running off like I forgot which proposition that
yeah,
allowed them to sell. Yeah,
right. So that's 25 years, right? So like, I might
we
be
could be talking more
underestimating.
like the 30 or 40-year range for the psychedelia becoming more
Right.
normalized.
But again,
Yeah.
these are mushrooms. Like, let's like take a step back. These are mushrooms. They've been used for thousands of years. You know, could we do what we do to psychedelics, what we did to tobacco? Like, tobacco was a ceremonial plant. It was used sparingly by indigenous tribes. Probably didn't cause cancer, but we took it and turned it into, like, packs of 20 and,
Yeah,
like,
right. And with
all
all
those
the added
chemicals,
chemicals. Yeah.
right? And then we turned it into something that kills us all, and we're all addicted to it, right?
And
So, like,
that's just it's almost like it's a double-edged sword, right? If
right,
you introduce litigation and scale to anything like that, it
right.
starts to slowly corrupt itself kind of from within.
I mean, that's a whole other topic. I mean, that's just human nature.
Yeah, that's for the societal analysis
Yeah.
episode.
And that's never changing. People think, oh, we're going to get better. No, we're not. It's been
Right. We're
like
just
that
going to
for,
get better at acknowledging that we're not.
I think
Maybe
that's
that's the
it.
goal. Yeah, no, I think it's really interesting to see the services that you guys are offering, and I hope that some folks can find some knowledge here. As far as next steps for you for Frshminds, are there any psychedelic conferences
Yeah,
or
so,
events or anything on the horizon?
yeah, so we're off. I think in November we'll be at Microdose in Miami. That's a good time. Lots of fun. I mean, they managed to get it. They're more pharmaceutically orientated, but I think at a certain point there is going to be. I'm not going to say it's like a giant inflection, but there will be growing consumer awareness, and that's really where we are now. Is that a lot of people from cannabis got into psychedelics, and I don't think everyone realized, like, wait a minute, I'm getting into pharmaceuticals, right?
Yes, I'd agree
So
with that,
like,
man. I think when I attended
right?
the
Like, yeah,
when I attended that psychedelics conference for Benzinga, it was an eye opener to me to understand the state of the
right,
industry currently and see some of the doctors and research scientists presenting their findings and things like that. I mean, on some level, learning about how like ketamine can be used as suicide prevention, and when there's like not other substances that can really change those thoughts. There's some pharmaceutical angles with psychedelics that are truly needed, right?
right.
They're
So
necessary and they only have good at their intent,
so
but I think that there's another angle from the pharmaceutical side that I worry about, right? That we will shift from like, hey, these mushrooms just grow naturally in a
right,
jar or in a closet, to being like, okay, now it's this
right.
high profit business where one company is basically printing money with these pills.
Right, like that. That's exactly,
Yeah.
like, it's one thing different, like MDMA, which may help with like relationship issues. That will supposedly be a huge market, probably driven by female consumers. I know 4 or 5 players in the MDMA space, but on the mushroom front, like, you're right, these things, like, how much is it to grow some mushrooms, right?
Yeah.
And they're probably 90% of the way there.
I
So
may
in
or may
terms
not
of,
have had a little R2D2
right,
humidifier
Right.
with a closet setup that did a pretty good job.
Right. Like, as long as you like get some good growing, but here's the thing. There's already people who specialize in growing mushrooms at scale. They're
Yeah,
called
right. And
farmers.
they're growing for the health
Right.
industry, for the produce industry, and they've got,
They're already there.
right.
Right. So yeah, you might have to bring in some, manufacturing processes, but by and large, like if you can grow a white button mushroom.
Yeah, a King Stropharia is just basic mushroom that you can then dry. You can prevent it from getting moldy, dry it correctly, and powder it. You're essentially ready to switch over into any business on that
And
side.
there's some companies in Red Light Holland is doing that with truffles. They're trying to drive that. They've actually bought a mushroom grower in Canada, the East Coast, to I assume at some point, and I know no one at Red Light Holland, so it's not like I'm saying and giving away any, inside information, but they are probably going to flip that over, right? In the event that anything ever becomes legal,
Wow. Yeah, just be ready to go fully
right?
operational.
Yeah,
Yeah. No, I could see it for sure, and I think that like depending on the substance, I think that of the pharmaceutical industry needs to keep a certain distance. There's other substances where it's probably needed by the community, and
right.
it's wild to see the innovation that they're uncovering,
Right.
right? With
Like
these
MAPS is going through phase 3 trial. I think it's phase 3 trials with MDMA. Yeah, there's certain anything
yeah,
lab produced, 100%. But like
right.
that's what I'm
Like let's
saying.
study that thoroughly. Let's get all the smartest minds on it and make sure it's gone through the ringers. Yeah.
Right. This is a plant, right? Like, come on. Like, we've been using this stuff for thousands of years. The biggest, I think, risk with mushrooms is when people go foraging and they pick a poisonous mushroom, right?
They end up eating
That's
something
like,
that's just not cool.
yeah, but compared to like, you would see it. There are like adverse reactions to psilocybin, but when you look at like risk profiles, it's so low. I think someone said like the risk of like psilocybin is equivalent to jaywalking, right? Like these are
Wow.
low risk. And again, I'm not a doctor.
Yeah,
I'm not
right.
like,
Same
telling you
here.
to go out and do psilocybin, but the risk profiles are exceptionally low because of you would hear about them more from the emergency room. There would be people banging the drum, and especially in the US where you've got this division between red and blue. Like some of the hardcore red they're the ones who are pushing psilocybin and psychedelics for veterans, right?
Right. And
So
that's kind of
like,
going to could
right,
potentially
like of
unite
all
more than
the
polarize.
things that people are reaching across the aisle for, it might be drugs, right?
Yep. Yep. Which might be historically significant and kind of poetic because of other societies, right? Moving
Right,
through those same substances or finding connection in those
right.
rituals and things.
I mean, it was like it was the boomers who started using them in like the 60s and 70s, and now they're the ones who are on the tail end of their careers. So and trying to drive these forward. I think it's Rick Perry was a big supporter in Texas. I'm trying to remember, but some hardcore conservatives are driving that forward.
And not always who you'd expect, but definitely a needed kind of segment of the population,
Yeah,
that could benefit from psilocybin therapy or from
yeah,
other
no, no,
approaches of
100%,
ketamine and
100%.
things.
But
Do you,
yeah, listen, it's an interesting space. It's it's very fragmented. It is, we're trying to get it to past the buyer beware stage. We're in the midst of building relationships with people. We want to know all of the players in the industry. And
right.
realistically, once you have a community, you increase the safety factor. And that's ultimately what you want, like market acceptance, you want to reduce the risk. So people, want to know how close are you to hospitals, first aid training, all that sort of stuff. Stuff that, if you're
Yeah.
30, you might not care about. But if you're like 55 and you got like a couple kids and a family, you're going to make that purchase decision much differently, right?
True. That some of the amenities start to look a little better on that
Right.
side.
The amenities, even just like the pure safety of it.
Right. I could see that. Yeah, man, it's been an enlightening conversation here. I'm looking forward to see what happens with Frshminds going forward, and
Cool.
looking forward to trying to utilize it as well to find a trip
Find a retreat.
a retreat
Yeah, no,
here, maybe in the spring. That'd be awesome.
Yeah, no, I mean, listen, we'll keep in touch and let you know how it goes.
Definitely. Ellie, in the meantime, Josh, where can our listeners find more about you and connect with Frshminds?
So yeah, Frshminds, www.frshminds.com, FRSHMINDS.com. No E in Frshminds. And we're always updating the site. We've got some features we'll be pushing out hopefully the next week or so. Our goal is to make it super simple for the consumer to use. Don't make me think is my motto.
Awesome. You guys heard it here. Check out frshminds.com, no E in that, and learn about a retreat. You know, yes. It's an interesting thing, kind of building and up momentum over here in the corners.
It's something everyone should do once.
Indeed. Thanks, Josh. Thank you for listening to the Apartment 113 podcast. For more information about the show, along with our services and courses, visit apt113.com. We offer cannabis software product management, cannabis education courses, and freelance writing. With over a decade of experience in the cannabis industry, Apartment 113 is here to help.